we are going to get started. And during this webinar, if you have any questions at all for our panelists or for Project Unicorn, you can throw them into the chat or into the Q&A, but we are going to get started. And if you're just joining us, this webinar is called The Benefits of Being a Project Unicorn Pledge Signatory. This is specific for vendors. We have two sets of signatories, vendors and school systems or school networks or districts. And this one is targeted to vendors so that you can see what the benefits are. So in just a moment, we're going to do some introductions. And then we'll do a quick Project Unicorn overview for anyone who maybe doesn't know exactly what Project Unicorn is and what the initiative is at Project Unicorn. We'll talk about the pledge, which is why we're here today. We'll have a panel discussion with some really amazing panelists that I'm going to introduce in just a moment. And then we'll do a Q&A. And again, if you have any questions during this time, please put them into the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll do some thank yous and next steps. But before we get started, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Tim. Tim, let us know where you're joining us from also.
Hi, I'm Tim Beekman with Safari Montage, and I'm joining you in reference to we are part of the group. We very much believe in the Project Unicorn, where they're headed, what they're doing, and what they're developing. And very excited to do this presentation as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And Gautier, go for it.
Good morning. Still almost in the Bay Area. Well, not anymore, but just about. My name is Gautier Philippart. I'm the founder and CEO of Actionly. Actionly is the first family relationship management platform, which means that we empower schools and their partners with all the tools they need to engage families hassle-free. Very happy to be part of this panelist as well and help share how Project Unicorn is helping us push our message forward and helping us connect it with the ecosystem.
Amazing. And I am Chloe Sanducci. I'm the project manager at Project Unicorn, and I am going to be facilitating this webinar today. And in just a moment, we're going to hear from our amazing panelists. We're going to ask them some questions. But again, if you have any questions for them now or while you hear them speak, feel free to throw them into the chat. But before we hear from them, we're going to do a quick little overview of Project Unicorn for anyone who does not know what Project Unicorn is. So we are a project that's an initiative of Innovate EDU, and it's made up of a coalition of national education organizations that are collaborating to promote and support the use of data interoperability in K-12 education. And specifically, we support a standards-aligned ecosystem, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a moment. We are fully funded by the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And what we do here is we provide resources and support for vendors, school systems, and states, specifically referring to interoperability. And for those of you who may not know what interoperability is, this is the seamless, secure, and controlled exchange of data between applications. That is the definition in which we use for interoperability, and that is everything that we talk about here at Project Unicorn. And we're here to support vendors as well as school systems that are looking to implement interoperability within their data systems and data models. And as a vendor, you should be asking yourself, why is this important? And specifically, why is this important in education? Well, we have to think about the perspective of the school. They're swimming in data. They're using, 1 million, or there's actually a statistic of how many apps are being used within a school. I think the average is between 7 to 20 different apps within school, and they can't make meaningful data-driven decisions because they have to click in and out of different apps. It's also not as secure. So when we talk about the security of the things that we're doing online, on the computers, everything with technology, interoperability is right there within that conversation. And many challenges are caused in the schools just from a lack of interoperability. It's not efficient for time. It's a waste of time for teachers who need to actually be making those meaningful decisions about student success and how to best help and support students. And for you, when you're thinking about working with schools, when you're thinking about renewals, sales, usability, this is a pain point that can affect the decision that is going to come from the school. So in a moment, I'm going to show you the data standards, but when you align to these data standards early in your product development cycle, that does demonstrate this visionary leadership and also just product maturity to customers and investors. And this can actually reduce future technical debt. And you'll hear a little bit more again from Tim and Gautier and what they prioritize and why they feel interoperability is important and Project Unicorn. But these are just a couple quick little points for our conversation today. And we're not going to go too deep into this, but I just wanted to quickly showcase. So again, Project Unicorn, we are supporting a standards aligned ecosystem for data interoperability. And there are 4 major open education data standards organizations in the US. You can see them listed here. And we do have a couple 101 data standards webinars on our YouTube page that you can check out if you want to get more information. But we're here to talk specifically about the Project Unicorn community and the Project Unicorn platform and how you can become part of this community. And just now we chatted in the community platform. We're going to talk about, just as this webinar is named, the benefits of being a Project Unicorn pledge signatory, which then gets you into our community and our network. So when you sign the pledge, you're signaling to other school networks or to school networks, to other edtech tools, and to your school community, the schools within which you work with, as well as your customers, that you're committed to helping your students grow and their students grow with interoperability. And this is just a breakdown of what the pledge actually says. So the pledge is saying that you are pledging generally and overall your commitment to increasing interoperability within your edtech products. And we're going to chat in just a moment the pledge so you can actually look at this. But when you pledge, you are saying that number one, you're pledging to help students and families transition to connected classrooms. You're committed to working collaboratively with schools to transform teaching and learning, to protecting student privacy and committing to sign the pledge, and also the Privacy Forum for Student Privacy Pledge. These are some of the things you'll see within the pledge when you sign it. Number two, you're advocating for interoperability, so committing to maximizing equitable access and availability by advocating for data interoperability. Number three, you're committing to accelerate progress toward data interoperability for your products. And number four, you're providing access to quality data standards aligned digital content. So that is what you are signing when you sign the pledge. And there's some benefits that come along with signing the pledge. So a few things that you get that is different than organizations that just connect with us one-on-one. Those organizations that do actually sign the pledge have access to all these different things that are listed here. So the first one is technical assistance. And you get technical assistance from the Project Unicorn team, but we also are able to connect you with all of our different communities and networks. So we're able to connect you with different organizations that are in the same type of lane as you, or they're doing the same thing as you, or maybe we saw someone do what you're looking to do and they can be a mentor or support. We're able to connect you with our technical advisory committee, which you're going to hear from our panelists today a little bit more about what they do on the technical advisory committee and how that can help you as well. We will also just connect you with any other signatory that is doing the same thing as you. So you have that technical assistance. Again, it's completely free. This is a nonprofit organization, and we're here to support you as much as you need. We also have a brand new community Slack workspace. So this is specifically just for pledge signatories. We have a district one, and then we also have a vendor one. So we know that some of our best lessons and our best practices, they come from this community. So this is a feature where you can collaborate and you can connect with each other on the Slack workspace. We also have invite-only closed webinar sessions, which is really special because just like this webinar, many of our webinars are public regardless of your pledge signatory status, but we also have been doing more and will continue to do more of invite-only closed webinar sessions that are only for our pledge signatories. We, just as I described with the technical assistance, we like to call ourselves unicorn matchmakers. So again, we are trying to create that network of like-minded practitioners and partners. So in our one-to-one technical assistance calls, we'll assess where you are at with your interoperability journey, and we'll try to find a mentor or someone in the same situation so that you can kind of share those pain points and that advice and connect with that person. And again, that is also what that Slack workspace is for, so that you can, with or without us, find someone to collaborate with if you're looking to do something specific. You also have opportunities to be featured in a Project Unicorn webinar or session or conference session. Just as you're going to hear Gautier and Tim talk today, they are pledge signatories among other things within Project Unicorn that they serve on. And we love to collaborate and work together on conference sessions, webinars, in-person sessions, boot camps. So being a signatory will also give you that access. And then we have things for presentation toolkits. So if you're trying to implement interoperability or a plan with your team, we have kits to get you started. We have template presentations, activity sheets, and different things that you can communicate your plan effectively. And we're also just here to help you build your plan out. So these are the benefits of becoming a Project Unicorn pledge signatory. But instead of just hearing me talk to you and tell you that, I want you to be able to hear from actual pledge signatories, their experience. So we're going to bring Tim and Gautier back on camera to answer a couple panel questions. And again, if you have any questions for them, please put it into the chat. We will answer that after these couple questions that we have. So Tim, we'll start with you. Tell us more about your journey in becoming a Project Unicorn pledge signatory.
Well, I think from my perspective, I was looking, and I'm on a lot of the other standards organizations, and I was looking at really the standard organizations themselves aren't focused on the whole reality of interfacing everything, your silos that you talked about early. So that was attractive to me, very attractive in the sense that a community of different people regarding standards and interconnections and interoperability from different manufacturers, different standards organizations, is the only way we're going to ever succeed in education. So this really brought me down a path that Project Unicorn made a ton of sense to sign up and become part of the community, just for those reasons.
Great. And Gautier, what about you? Tell us more about your journey to becoming a pledge signatory.
On our side, interoperability, we actually, there's a gap in interoperability that impacts us. As I mentioned, we're a family relation management platform. So contact details for families is a core part of what we need to be able to function. We've been engaging with some standards bodies, specifically one edtech, to try to help define what interoperability means in terms of family contact details. How do we get information about the family, but not just the phone numbers and the emails, but who they are, who's a legal guardian, who's not, what are emergency contacts. So the whole structure of a family organization. And that doesn't exist. And so we still have a lot of efforts ongoing with the different standards body, but Project Unicorn gave us a way where we could pass that message across all of the different standards, and all of the stakeholders involved and engaged in creating those standards. So for us, it's a shortcut towards trying to get what we need to be part of the interoperability landscape for families across the whole network.
Great. And we'll start with Gautier for this next question. So it's a little bit different for both of you because you're both the founders or co-founders and presidents and CEOs of your organizations. But maybe you can answer this question also just giving advice of what you would do if you were not in that position. But what kind of buy-in did you or would you give advice for someone who needs to get that buy-in from others at the organization to sign the pledge or just even prioritize interoperability?
In our case, in my case, this actually came from one of our team members that was really doing more of the research on what family engagement is, where the standards are at, how do we evolve the standard. And then Nina is her name. She brought Project Unicorn and Innovate EDU as an organization to look into. So she brought it to me. And the first thing was, okay, well, how credible, how valuable, how relevant would this be? And it very quickly made sense. We also spent quite a bit of time to just look at the rubric that you have in terms of determining how we rank ourselves against the interoperability standard and questions you had. And there was a lot of very thoughtful questions as part of it that just highlighted the credibility and the awareness that existed in the Project Unicorn landscape. So for us, it was very easy, as you said. It's we made the decision very quickly to say, this makes a lot of sense to us. Let's spend the time, talk to the technical team to make sure that they are aware of what it means to be interoperable within the landscape of how Project Unicorn defines it. So it was more about making sure we had all of the information we needed across the organization to understand what it meant, and then move forward with signing the pledge.
I think for me, it's, first of all, what processes is, when you have attorneys and legal pieces, you all have to go through those. And so they had to review that. And so that was always, and then I think the other buy-in for us was very much that we are very much a standards-driven company and have been for 30 years. And I would say the standards really for the last 5 or 6 years have started to make some sense, but there's many different organizations within that standard. So my team wanted to buy in, or wanted a place they could go in that would facilitate a kind of a United Nations approach to standards, I'm going to say, and say, let's make sure that we can work with Unicorn and the interoperative piece and the pledge and the pieces, because they make sense across standardizations and across all of my departments within the organization. And I won't add to that, but when you're a standards organization and you believe very much in providing an end result that's not a silo, as you talked earlier, it was pretty good and easy to get the organization to go along with that, as long as you explained that particular environment.
And I just have a follow-up question for you, Tim, if you don't mind answering, thinking about working with school districts as customers or as clients, and thinking of trying to get their buy-in for the interoperability. Is anything that you can kind of say on that topic as well?
Well, I'll say it guardedly, but I'll say it. What my feeling really is that districts, as they become more knowledgeable, K-12 districts aren't in the business of data. I think we need to understand that. They're in the business of educating children and parents. But they are now also in the business of data management, data delivery, data platforms, free lunch, whatever it may be. And so, I think you have to look at all those pieces and from a district's perspective, how am I going to make all this make sense? And without something like you're doing, it's not going to make sense. And if you want to be successful, it's not going to make sense to kind of guess and not get the great information that you guys provide. So from a district's perspective, without question, without having those pieces, you'll never been in a fundamental successful path. You'll always be working and having things silos off to the side that don't make it easy. Teachers don't want complications. They want information. And standardizations that work together in that problem.
Definitely. And we'll do a couple more questions, and then it looks like we have a few questions rolling in. So I'm going to go to GoTA for this one. So what have you and your organization personally benefited from being a Project Unicorn Pledge signatory? And also for both of you as newly certified vendors, feel free to loop that in, how that has also benefited you.
From my perspective, there's two different ways that there was immediate value. The first one was the network. The second was the content. So the network, I know that was obvious from day one. Looking at the other pledge members, the quality of their representatives on the different panels, on the different groups they're part of, it just opened the doors to so many relevant introductions and connections that are helping our business move forward. Not only on the interoperability side, but just in the network, the aspect, of how we collaborate and bring things together. And I could name 5 or 6 members that I've had in the past 2 months, one-on-one follow-up to our discussions about interoperability, about aligning the different value propositions that products have and so forth. So that's the first part. The second is the content, which is twofold. One is being exposed to content. Like we had a members only kind of privacy session that was really informative, that again led me to more network connections that I was able to deep dive into. But there was some information that I wouldn't have had access to or wouldn't have known was available unless I was part of that side. And then similarly, still on the content piece, like we have needs as a company in terms of interoperability, and being able to push our request, our needs, our content out to the organization to get feedback, to get perspective is extremely valuable. So those are two, just no-brainer reasons for why on our side we needed to be part of it. And I can go deeper in terms of the TAC, in terms of how we are part of the steering committee for one roster and how everything works together. So there's a lot of value that comes from the membership.
From my perspective, I think a way that we look at the benefit is simplicity to the end customer versus lack of understanding. This organization brings a fundamental basic understanding of what you need to do to integrate, and it brings up questions for our K-12 districts and K-12 schools to say, why did you do this? And once they hear the reasons that you already just mentioned, you took my whole spiel, so I have much to say. But no, that's great. But that we're thinking the same thing. But from their perspective, they know as a provider and a partner that you have facilitated research on how to be successful. So, from a company's perspective, it's a path, whether you're a district as well, because, a district needs to be able to say, listen, I am doing some things that make sense across standardization, across interoperability, and without having a place to go through for support on that, it would be much more difficult.
Great. And we have one more question, but we'll pause for a moment to actually take this question from the chat. So for both of you, how are you using Project Unicorn for milestone setting? How do you define the milestones themselves?
I can start with that one because that's one of my favorite topics. Since we use so many standards from one edtech, IEEE, SMPTE, NAB, all these broadcast standards from so when we start to look at Project Unicorn and milestones within the environment, it's all these different providers that are part of the standardization group and the TAC team and the members that we can build a milestone of, okay, this is what we want to accomplish. This is who possibility can help provide it. And the communication is open for that model. So it's not just about building that milestone. It's a great question. I love it. And I'm excited about it. But it's also about the path that it gives you doors to open to get to your milestones. And without without a whole lot of extra work. So we usually set up, an example, a standardization process for any of our projects. And there's milestones along there of integration and success. And so the success of interoperability, the success of an outcome that a teacher can use something rather simply and then more complicated to go to 5 places, all those milestones are set in the delivery that we couldn't do without what we're doing now.
I'll add a little bit to that as well, because thanks for answering first, so I had time to think about it. Similarly, Tim, like we have our own internal milestones, and I see the standards body and Project Unicorns as means to get to those milestones in terms of interoperability. So we're talking in our case about family engagement and family contact details. Well, a very simple first milestone is, can we get parent preferred language coming from the student information system? That seems simple, but it's not in the One Versa standards. It is in the student information systems. There are some state-specific complexities, but it's the first milestone that I know that through Project Unicorn and the other standards, we can get to that within a certain time frame. The sooner the better. But then we can go to the next milestone, which, okay, how do we define family structure? What are legal guardians versus emergency contact? Okay, that's a little bit more complicated. And then if you keep going and going, so it's more about having these gated definitions for what interoperability means in terms of family contact details, and then getting the organizations to support us in getting to those standards to then be able to deploy effectively within schools.
Great question. Thank you so much for that one. And we will just end on anything to add about from both of you. What is the value, or what value do you see just being part of this community? Anything to build on what you've already said?
I'll go first. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, I think the value prop is the talented people within the organization that really believe in where Project Unicorn community has to head. I think, and we've kind of discussed that, but I think it's important to bring up again. And I think that it's an organization that is not based on a single company that has standards. That is huge, because every standards organization, just like every vendor, thinks their stuff's the best. And here's this United Nations in the middle of it that takes all these standards across and works together. That to me is a statement that's extremely important for a district or a vendor partner.
Yeah, very likewise, and similar to a point that Tim made a bit earlier. The whole point of the interoperability is to make deployment feasible and easy in school districts. It allows the data flow that is required to make a solution effective, and just not a whole exercise where the district have to manage the data themselves because systems don't talk to one another and so forth. So the more we can contribute to that by being part of the community and getting everyone to align to this and standardize across the standard themselves, it just makes the service, the value proposition to districts and students much more effective, much more easy to deploy. And that's the whole purpose of interoperability, is this ability to just have the right tools, leverage and use as much as possible, as far as possible, in the easiest way possible.
Great. Well, I want to thank Gauthier and Tim so much for their amazing presentation today. And they're both really, I'm not going to speak for them of giving up their time, but they're both really amazing at connecting and talking and answering questions. So if you are interested and want to connect with them, you can reach out to Project Unicorn and we'll get that to them and see if they have time to meet or if they can answer your question. But before you go, you can, if you have not done so already, sign the Project Unicorn pledge right now with that QR code. It should take under 2 minutes, or with the link that will be chatted in just a moment, or I'll re-chat that in real quick. Oh, just chatted in. Perfect. I clicked the link. There it is. And also, we chatted in our resources. So a lot of our resources, both Tim and Gauthier spoke about the resources that are available. Feel free to start there. And then you can schedule a call with Project Unicorn for technical assistance, and then we can continue to have that conversation and how we can best help you. This is the Project Unicorn email, projectunicorn@innovateedunyc.org. And we thank you so much for coming today. And again, thank you to Tim and Gautier for your amazing panelist participation.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Of course.